Fabulous. We are connected. Welcome everyone. I'm here with my dear, sweet friend, Kiki Lynch. We are pumped to chat with you. In fact, we actually just had lunch. We met up earlier today and saw each other, and our lunchtime conversation, we decided, was so profound we should have recorded that.
Just like a lot more slurping of photo.
It would have
been great.
Less well mannered, but we've got a lot to say, Kiki and I. We can put the world to rights over a lunch. So hopefully we can channel some of that inspiration and share it with you today. Kiki, there's so many things I could say about Kirileigh, but she is a yoga teacher. When we first met, we met in the capacity of teaching and practicing yoga together. And we also have the same lineage background. We both trained as Jivamukti yoga teachers a while ago, yeah. But Kiki's made quite a transition in her career, and I'll let her talk about that. I won't speak for her. And really kind of evolved, I guess you could say, into different types of offerings. And part of what we want to talk about today is the courage and the bravery often that it takes to really embody transformation when transformation comes knocking at your door. We may not always choose it. We may quite like, in fact, to stay where we are because it feels safe. But there are moments in our lives where transformation comes calling, and we have the option to either listen to that call or not. And I guess that's what we want to dive into and explore a little bit in today's conversation. So Kiki, do you want to give us a bit of context and maybe talk about your own journey in regard to that paradigm?
Yeah, sure. So I used to be an atheist. Let's just start there. I used to just be like this straight up, full on, there is nothing more than what we can see, hear, and touch in this world. Anybody who thinks there is anything more than that is probably a bit dim, actually, and I feel a bit sorry for them. And then I had so far to fall from that position. I put myself up on a pedestal, and then change came and found me. So I got into yoga and really just felt like I was coming home. Just all of a sudden, the philosophy of yoga just felt like I'd heard it for many lifetimes and was just remembering it in this lifetime. And so that kind of set me off on this spiritual path. But even then I was still a bit like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, don't talk about it at parties, like really downplay it. And managed to do that for a while. Was a yoga teacher for about 8 years, managing to just like pretend that I'm not really actually doing anything spiritual. Who'd want to do that? Ill. But you've got but I was lying to myself. And kind of hurting myself a bit as a result of not being true to who I am. And then in 2015, I had been doing ayahuasca a little bit up until that period. And I'd maybe done kind of 9 or 10 journeys, I think, by about that stage. And then I did this journey that just changed my life. And that's the oldest story ever told, isn't it? Ayahuasca changed my life. And in the ceremony, I was told that I was a channel and who my teacher was. And then basically kicked out of the ceremony. Was like, that's the information, go deal with it. And I'm a bit enthusiastic anyway. Sometimes if I get a bit of you've seen me do this, I get a bit of a passion for something and all of a sudden I've got the vigor of the newly converted. So I really skipped towards this message. I went, and my teacher was Lynette Arcady, my energy mentor. I trained with her for 3 years. I really threw myself into this, potentially a little naively, which I think can be a good thing. I think if I had have known what was coming, maybe I wouldn't have done it, because it blew my life up. And that's, as I've come to understand, that's a really big part of the spiritual journey. I thought it was all like sunshine and puppies and mala beads and good times. And it is, but my life fell apart. Of course, it was also falling together, but it fell apart. And then I had to learn about faith and trust, right? Because you're watching your life fall apart. And yet I was connected to this infinite source. All of a sudden I could speak to guides, I could speak to angels, I could like tune the cosmic radio station in a way I'd never been able to do it before. So on one hand, my material life is falling apart and my spiritual life is like jacked in and connected to something amazing. And learning to hold the space between those two things has really been like the journey of the last 5 years of my life. Yeah,
right. And I'm interested in this sort of like pivotal moment where you did this ayahuasca ceremony and you kind of got the download. and then the feeling of resistance, because I feel like that there's something very archetypal in that. Like, it may not be that particular context, but most people in their lives have moments that feel like junctions where we kind of hear some message, or we receive some message in whatever form. It could be coming from another person, it could be a dream, it could be a download like you received, or it could just be something really mundane, like, you know, an ad on TV, but something is sparked, and we sort of know intuitively that we've got the choice to go one way or the other. And I'm really interested in what it is, how we choose those paths, where we stay stuck, where we get brave. Like, what do you have to share about that?
I've done it a few times in my life. So the woman who ended up being my teacher for energy channeling gave me energy readings many years ago, back in the day. And in one of the readings, she just casually said to me, "You should try yoga. I think you'll get a lot out of it." So I didn't do a yoga class for 5 years after that. I was like, la 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 la, da da da. I really like my pain. I'll just stick with my pain, thank you. And then I came around, and the way that it presented in the ayahuasca was, it was my second ceremony where I was told that I was a channel. The first ceremony I was told I was a channel, and who my teacher was straight up ignored it, paid no attention, was like, there was a lot of other things going on in that ceremony, and I focused on all of them, even while knowing that the really important message over here is the one I'm ignoring. And it was ayahuasca that in the second ceremony was like, "Lady, we spoke about this. You're a channel. Here's your teacher. Get out until you go and deal with it." I have a process. So I like to call it the Pinchy process, because that's just like, that's my nickname for myself. And the Pinchy process is denial and hiding and numbing. I love a bit of numbing. And at first I thought I was doing things wrong. And I've come to understand that we all have our process that goes through. So give me about a month of numbing through television. And then I kind of need to create a space where I can just be like, follow my denial to the logical end point of my denial, because it's there. I need to explore it. Like, and that's what, you know, it's like shadow work, right? We don't just deny our shadow, we bring it into the light. So I try and bring my denial into the light these days. I've gotten better at it. And I just watch myself numb out, and I watch myself avoid, and I watch myself not want to do it. And somehow that clears the space for me to get to this point where I can be like, I'm scared. And then that can be the beginning of, like, I think when we can say out loud, I'm scared, that opens up possibilities, because it's okay to be scared. I don't know is another really good one. I don't know how to do this, because we're allowed to be a beginner. I think for me, the process, very much is about taking it back to basics and not denying anything, not denying that I'm scared, or I don't know how to do this, or I don't want to do this, or do I have to do this? I also describe it as throwing a tantrum like a toddler in a supermarket, you know, when they just make themselves really heavy. I do a lot of just making myself really heavy as part of the process, to be like, all right, now I've cleared that out of the way. What do I have left now? Where can I go with this? And just one other thing to say on that a coach that I worked with many years had this really great thing that she said, if you've got resistance, like if it pushes your buttons and you don't want to do it, it's probably a pretty good sign. And obviously that comes with caveats, and, you know, like, you don't deny your own instincts, but somehow underneath that, I don't want to do it, you know, I need to do this. This is good for me. And for me, it's how you tune into that, how you remove the interference and tune into the, all right, I can do this. I can do this. I can be scared and do it anyway. So
that brings up the kind of role of intuition, I guess, because it's intuition that would help us to discern between, I don't want to do this thing because it's not the right thing for me, versus I don't want to do this thing because I'm scared and I'm numbing or denying or pretending it's not there. How do we cultivate our intuitive capacity so that we can have that discernment?
Yeah, it's a great question, and a complicated answer. It's time and it's practice. I always say that learning for starters, intuition is our birthright. It's there. You've already got it. You may not be comfortable working with it, but that's okay. It's a skill. You can relearn it. It's like learning another language. You are going to have periods where you sound like an idiot, or you don't understand what's being said to you, or you're speaking at the level of a 4-year-old. So you've got to, like, let it unfold and keep, use it or lose it as well, learning a new language, learning how to talk to your intuition. So all of that is like getting the skills up to be able to really hear these big answers. If you've never worked with your intuition before, you probably shouldn't let it help you decide massive life questions, right? Like you want to build up to that. But the thing about intuition is it's often inconvenient. It's often inconvenient and it doesn't go away. It's that voice in your ear. And it doesn't have judgments. It's never like you're a piece of shit and therefore you can't even do it. Why would you even think about it? It never appears in the voice of you, the school teacher who shamed you, or your parent who didn't support you, or the ex who bullied you. It's never in that voice. It's always in your voice or a voice you've never heard before. So that can be a really nice way of knowing what's intuition and what's like shame or doubt or fear. And yeah, often it's inconvenient. And it's the voice that tells you the same thing for 10 years, even though you've ignored it for 10 years. And you've hurt yourself so hard ignoring it for 10 years that you're finally ready to give listening to it a shot.
I want to talk to you a little bit about teaching yoga and transitioning from that space of teaching yoga very much with a physical kind of focus, because you still teach yoga, you're still a yoga teacher now, and moving into the realm of working more with energy. And maybe I don't know, I want to ask you, seeing energy as you're teaching, or like, I don't know what role the sort of energetic or the subtle body, let's say, the pranamaya kosha plays in your teaching. But I'm guessing as you've evolved as a human being, your yoga practice and your teaching of yoga would also have evolved. What does that look like?
So this is one of those things where sometimes we have a spiritual awakening, or we, me stepping into the world of energy and being able to channel. And sometimes it makes your life really hard when people ask you at a party what you do, and you're like, I don't think you really want to know the answer to that question. Let's just say
I'm reading your aura right now.
I channel energy. Yes, I'd love another drink. So sometimes it makes your life a little bit more difficult, and other times it makes your life unbelievably easy. And for me, that is yoga teaching. So when I was teaching, I always had this idea that I was a good teacher if I worked really hard on my class. So I'd really plan out the asana, I'd plan out the Dharma talk, and that's how I knew, and this is all fear speaking as well, right? But that's how I knew I was a good teacher. I put the effort in. And then as I was teaching like that, I would have this little voice in the back of my head go, don't teach that asana, teach this asana. Or don't do that Dharma talk, do this Dharma talk. And for a while, again, because it's the pinchy process, I was like, no. And then one day I was just like, fine, shut up, fine, I'll do that pose here. And the more I listened to it, the better my classes got. That's when they just took off. And all of a sudden, because I was reading the energy of the room, I was tuning in to everybody in the room, and I was teaching to the room, not my idea of what it would be, but what it actually was. And I would make the joke that I'd leave my class plan, in the room. I wouldn't be able to discover what I was teaching. And sometimes it's really frustrating when you've got a 6 a.m. Friday morning class and you can't figure out what you're teaching until you walk in that door. It's like, oh my God, please, please let me prep for this. But then it became amazingly easy to be able to tune in and let the energy flow and let the class really be what it was. I guess it's like getting out of your own way in a way. And again, removing obstacles, removing interference, and letting it flow and trusting the flow, trusting that you can be in flow and that it's okay. And not only is okay, it's better than anything else that could possibly have been, no matter how much hard work you put into it.
So let's say I'm a yoga teacher who's less experienced, like I'm a fairly new yoga teacher, and I'm wanting to tap into that capacity. I'm wanting to really teach to the room, and not just technically, not just in terms of what injuries people may have or what their capacity might be physically, but the energy body in the space. What kind of processes or practices would be good for me to do to start to hone that skill? Do you believe it's a skill set anyone can hone? Is it a gift that you've either got or you haven't got, or is it a skill I can cultivate?
Birthright. Every single one of us have it. We just aren't ever really taught how to cultivate it until we are. Yeah, absolutely. It's not denied to anyone on this earth. Tuning in, tuning out is how it began for me. And I'd found energetically, I would teach a yoga class, and at the end I'd be on a high. I'd be high as a kite at the end of teaching. And I'd be like, let's all go out to dinner. Woo. And then I'd like fall asleep in my plate of food an hour later. Like I was peaking and troughing, right? And so I started tuning in, tuning out. So at the beginning of class, I'd get some essential oils, rub them on my hand, rub them over my aura, and just say, I'm tuning in. I tune in, I step in, here I am, I'm about to teach. I'd ask for what I want. May I teach well? May the students enjoy this? May I give them what they need? Whatever it was. And then at the end of class, I would tune out. Oils on my hands again. Okay, I let everybody, what did I say? Everybody else takes their shit back. I take my shit back. Like I separate, it's done now. And so creating the container created this safe space to acknowledge that it is its own thing and the rules can be different there. Am I channeling when I'm in the supermarket? Probably not. I'm just buying what I want to eat. But when I'm in the yoga class, I'm opening that space up and letting that possibility be present. And then slowly. So I would still prepare my class and just listen to the voice once. I'd let the voice tell me one movement I could do. And then I'd go back to my class plan and feel safe. And then it was 2 movements, and then it was 3, and then it was a whole sequence, and then eventually the whole class. Yeah, and like to be amazed, that's the other thing. Don't skip over it. Don't not be full of wonderment and amazement at it. Like I sometimes would teach sequences where I would be terrified. I would have no idea what was coming next because I was just letting it come through me, trust and faith that it would come through. And then at the end of it, when it all came together, you've kind of got to do a little bit of a thank you. I saw that. Thank you. And feel really good about it. Yeah. Let yourself be scared and let yourself be thrilled.
And it's a metaphor for life, right? It goes full circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is this sort of like diving in with our eyes open in full conscious awareness, and also being open to the wonder, being open, because the flip side of the fear is the wonder and the flow and the joy and the connection, right? So if we close ourselves down through fear to the things that we can't feel or see, we also close ourselves down to the beauty. I was talking with, Anna Greer. So I was actually interviewing Anna for one of these sessions earlier on this morning, and she's doing a whole practice that relates very much to rewilding and reconnection with natural spaces. And we were talking about this exact same thing, that we open ourselves up to connection. You know, when you live in the city, when you live in a very urban or concrete type place, you gradually get more and more closed down. And when you're in nature, and you've moved to the beach recently, so I'm sure you can relate to this, you start to expand and the expansion happens. And so it goes exactly the same with our courage muscle, I guess. It's like we can be quite contracted or we can be more expansive. And on that note, I want to ask you a question around that, about protection. So if and when we become more expanded, right, we become more intuitive, we're stepping into this world of acknowledging and maybe even utilizing the pranamaya kosha, the energy fields around us, does that leave us more vulnerable? Like, are we then sort of a little bit energetically exposed as we go through the world? And if so, how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, so there's always light and dark. There's always light and dark. And we need, growing up in I grew up in Australia, you grew up in England, right? So they're countries with a Christian tradition. And we kind of have this idea in the Christian tradition that balance will be there when good has completely overtaken bad, light has completely overtaken dark. Then we will know that the world is in balance. But you and I have also spent a lot of time in Bali, and Balinese Hinduism doesn't look at the world like that at all. There's good and there's bad, and the key is just light and dark, the angels and demons, to just have them in balance. You never get rid of one, you never get rid of the other. How could you? They're the yin and the yang symbol, and there's always a bit of the white and the black and black and the white. You've got to understand that both exist and both are meant to exist. There's night and day, summer and winter. It's completely natural. Does tuning into this make you more vulnerable? No, it doesn't. Not as a condition of stepping into energetic worlds, but yeah, you need to step in with your eyes open, and you do need to learn to ground and protect. And that's what the tapping in and the tapping out at the classes were. That was like setting up my energy and going, all right, I'm here and I serve, and then I'm out, I'm done, and I let go of everybody else's stuff and I just take on what is mine. I use a technique that Lynette Arcadi, the golden dome. So I put a golden dome around myself whenever I do any reading, any channeling, any stepping into people's worlds. Even like I used to go clubbing a lot, and I had this period of my life where I was really opening up spiritually during the week and then just going night clubbing all weekend. And stepping into these, like if you step into a club that's been pumping for 48 hours and people have been doing all sorts of drugs and it's a little bit dark, I'd put my golden dome on then. So it doesn't even just have to be in the spiritual world, it can be in the material world, that you are allowed to say, this is my boundary. Nothing can cross this boundary. I have the power to stop anything from crossing this boundary. If it's not for my highest good, it can't even get close to me. I'm allowed to protect myself. I have the ability to protect myself, and I do, in fact, protect myself.
Mm. So part of that, a sort of piece of that is acknowledging that you've got capacity, right? That you've got the capacity to kind of, and this is something so many of us struggle with. I mean, we struggle with boundaries in life anyway. So many of us struggle. And I want to say, and I don't want to be gender biased, but I want to say, particularly as women, we often struggle with saying no to each other, to our partners, to our kids, to our colleagues, to our bosses. Like, it's really hard for us culturally to
don't want to come and have a chat, and we don't want to have them.
So that piece of like having the boundaries and the clarity, but then again, in saying the no, we're also then clearly able to give the yes when we're open.
And there's some real power. Like, it surprised me the first time I started stepping out into energetic spaces and feeling and seeing energy that was not for my highest good, that I did not want to be around, and really putting my foot down and going, no, not today. You don't get to be here. And they respect it. It's like, whatever these energies are like, yep, boundary down. Okay, I'm off. Like, it actually, and then that's super empowering. And like, again, in the spiritual energetic world, but also you can say no to your partner and to your kids and to your friends, and it be this beautiful gift that you give them of like telling them what you need and them being able to respect it. As above, so below. It's the same in the energy world as in the material world.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to ask you about what you're working on at the moment. Like, what are your current projects? And when I ask that question, I'm asking you about your work in the world, like what projects you're working on that you're sort of putting out into the world, but also what are your internal projects? Like, what are you working on within as well as without?
Well, I mean, COVID, man, that's been a whole thing, hasn't it? and I think that, oh Lord, COVID is complicated. And again, we're in Australia at the moment, and so we speak from a bit of a bubble, where all is pretty well here as far as things go. And so because that's where I have been spending COVID, there's been a lot of time of the world slowing down and a lot of time of reflection. So last winter, I just did 3 months of shadow work, which is like, you did 3 months of shadow work the year before, didn't you? And look, it's not fun when you're doing it. But you do get to come out the other side with like some mad new skills and clarity and understanding. But a lot of shadow work and removing interference, because there hasn't been much the regular push and pull of the world has really changed. And so I've been trying to tune into that. And internally, that's really what I'm trying to tune into as well, that everything I'm channeling for my clients at the moment is the world has changed straight up. The world has changed, and it changed overnight about a year ago now. And we're still kind of scrambling to catch up. And the people in power, like especially here in Australia where things are relatively well, we're a little bit of like the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the world, in that the world changed, but our political leaders are a bit like, no, it didn't. It's fine. We'll just go back to exactly as things were. We haven't adjusted our priorities or changed our mind about anything. Let's just bang on with this capitalism. Who cares about the climate? That we'll just keep that going, shall we? And yet, deep inside all of us, we know that things have changed. The world has shifted and we have shifted. And in the absence of real leadership at the moment, I think a lot of us are trying to figure out what our futures look like. And can we trust ourselves enough to let everything change and have new priorities and want different things internally and externally? Yeah, and that's where I'm at the moment. Like, I'm really thinking of what the world is in 3 years and 5 years, and how I can step to meet that, even though there is a large part of me that would just, yeah, like I understood the world as it was. So can I just go back to that, please? That'd be amazing. Thank you. But you can't ever go back. It's like one thing on the spiritual journey. So you can't go back. So internally, that's where a lot of my work is at. And readings wise, that's what I'm mostly working with clients on at the moment. Like, how do we step into this future that has been given to us? If you want to talk about things that were given to us and that we didn't choose, none of us chose COVID. None of us chose climate change. Yeah, and yet here we are navigating it the best we can. And so a lot of my work I do, and what I'm focusing on at the moment, is one-on-one readings, but also extended processes. So one of my gifts, everybody's channel is different, and one of mine is I'm really good at channeling processes for people, where they come to me with a topic and I connect them to their higher power and get all the wisdom from the higher power to come through to teach them over the course of 2 to 3 months how to solve it, heal it, create it, overcome it, celebrate it. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, for people who don't know, like it's like new language, talk to me about like, what is a reading? What would that look like? What would that be? And what is a process? Maybe give me an example.
Yeah, great. So a reading is a bit like being an old-fashioned telephone operator, where you call and then they patch you through. So that's me. I'm the patched through, I'm the interpreter. So when somebody comes and sits with me, I can tune them into, and this is like just poor English words trying to describe magical concepts, and I just do my best. Their guides and their angels. So it's frequency and vibration. And I can't fully explain it. I don't have all the words for this. I just know I can do it. And I'm really good at it. So that somebody comes and sits with me and I patch them through to their guides and their angels. Angels tend to be big picture stuff, dharma, karma, past lives, theme of this life, all of that kind of stuff. Guides tend to be a little bit more people, places, things, material world stuff. And people ask questions and seek clarity, and I channel the answers back through. So it's not me, it's something much higher than me. And therefore the answers are infinitely better than anything I could ever come up with. And they're clearer. And so that's like a one-off process where people come and sit and we get them answers, and it's about an hour, and it's beautiful and really healing and really helpful. And a lot of people come with a bit of spiritual trauma. They're worried they're going to be scalded. Scalded? Is that hot water on you? What is it when you're in trouble with your mum because you did something wrong?
Both. Yeah, but it's the same word for both things.
Right. So they're afraid that they're going to be scolded for being bad. But actually, whenever we tune into source, we are just welcomed with open arms. And so that's really healing for a lot of people as well. So that's my one-on-one 60-minute readings. And then a process is something bigger. So a process is really individual to the person. And look, I've channeled some that are like 10 days long. I've channeled some that are a year long. I feel like the people who get the year long, talk about resistance. The people who get the year-long processes are like, couldn't I have one of the 10-day ones? And it's a guideline of what you need to do. So it's usually a daily practice, although sometimes it's weekly. And it's a guideline of what the best practices are for you to do in this time period to move through the issue. So people come to me for all sorts of things. I've helped people find houses. I've helped people get pregnant. I've helped people find love, come out, do their shadow work. It really just depends on what they're working on and what they need. Find a new job. I do quite a bit of that. And it's beautiful because it's like this, we can do so much stuff in our head. Say you want a new job, that you write pros lists and cons lists and you look online, and it can all just be in our head, but that doesn't connect us to the bigger purpose of our life. That's just us going, I want, or I think I can have, or I'm a bit scared and I'll just take whatever I can get. And these processes help move everything out of that way and open it up to like, what is the best thing for you? What do you actually really need? What do you need to let go of so that you can welcome this in? And how can you call it to you? It's pretty cool.
It's amazing. I mean, I've had a few sessions with you, and I don't say these words lightly. It's a bit of a cliche, but they really are life-changing. Like, it's really given me new directions and insights that have been quite phenomenal. I want to close off by picking up on something that you said just before, which I think is a really beautiful point for us to end on, and it's also something we were discussing over lunch, so I want to bring it in, which is this idea of the capacity for forgiveness and the capacity to start again, and the capacity that it's never too late, or we're not ever too broken. And I think this is really the promise of the yogic practice. Like, I know for myself as a lifelong practitioner of yoga, I believe in people's innate goodness. I believe in their wholeness. I believe in their possibility, the possibility for transformation and healing. I really do, in the core of my being. And when I look at what is good in the world's religions or in the world's spiritual practices, most of them have at their core that that message of goodness is possible, you know, and it's in us. It's our innate sense of self. So I guess I just would love you to speak to that a little bit and give us a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, and that's been one of the most amazing things for me, because as I've gone through this spiritual journey and as I've connected to these worlds beyond worlds and this bigger source, is we do live in a real punishment and reward world, where you're good, you're bad, you did the right thing, you did the wrong thing, you're judged. And especially more and more as we think about cancel culture, and as we think about the rise of, you know, social media is amazing what it has given us, and the way that voices previously unheard can now be heard. And we got Me Too and we got Black Lives Matter, and it's been incredible. But it also, there has seemed to be a bit of a punishment and reward. You said the wrong thing and now you're a rubbish person and you have to get put in the bin. And again, like a lot of us just maybe even had that in the homes we grew up in, that you were punished if you did bad, you were rewarded if you did good. There was maybe a favorite child and you potentially weren't that favorite child. There's just a lot of grading and that happens in the world. And so we think that may be how the spiritual world works as well. And the really good news is it's not. So, you know, the story of the prodigal son? Yeah, in the Bible. So 2 kids, one's good, stays home, does everything he's meant to. Other one goes out and just like is a cad and, you know, like bad, whatever that means. But then eventually comes back and the father welcomes him back into the family, doesn't shun him, doesn't deny him, brings him back in. And I never got that story. I was like, what? No, put him in the bin. Kid who did the right thing, surely they're the one who get all the rewards. Like, and it was only when I started channeling that I realized that is what our relationship with Source is. We are never judged when we return home. It doesn't matter how long it's been since you've connected in, or you've taken your practice, or you've prayed. It doesn't matter how far you've strayed, or how broken you've become, or how low you've gone. There is always a path back. In fact, from the other side, there's never even a view of you being broken. There's never even a view of separation. There is this understanding that nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted, and you are not wasted, and you are not lost. You're going through some shit that obviously you need to go through, because here you are. And it might be awful, and it may be uncomfortable, and it may be destructive, but it's not all of who you are. It's not all of your potential, and it's not the end of the story. Whenever you come home, you are welcomed with open arms. And seeing, that's one of the great joys of my job, is seeing people who didn't get a reading with me for a really long time because they were scared that they'd be roused on by their guides and the angels. And the guides and the angels are like, what? What do you mean? Like, it's fine. Like, come here. We love you. We love you. We love you. And that is magic to watch. And it's magic to experience. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I don't think there are any more words beyond that. For me, that is the embodiment of the yogic path. It's the embodiment of what it means to grow up spiritually as a human being. And I guess I think about this a lot as a parent, but also just as a human being in the world, that if we can embody some of that quality, like you were just talking about, the angels and the guides and their infinite capacity to hold space for us in all of who we are, if we can do that for each other, some of the division that we're seeing so much of in the world at the moment can start to dissolve, and we can agree to disagree, we can agree to be different, but we can also really hold space for the fact that each one of us is a sacred, holy being. You know, like our teacher Sharon Gannon says, see every other person as a part of you and a holy, precious being. It's a very simple message, but it's actually, I think, probably the most powerful one as human beings, having a human incarnation, a human experience that we can truly work towards embodying.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. It's always great. We could talk forever. I am excited to be able to share your work with people. So we'll make sure that everybody can get connected up to you and come see you for a reading should they wish to, and work with you, because that's for sure a life-changing experience.
Those people who, I'm in the goodie bag as well. So those people who signed up for the extra, for the VIP goodie bag, you get a discounted reading with me, and one of my online courses free. So
all the things. Thank you so much, Kiki. And yeah, watch this space. There'll be more of us in many different ways coming together again. But for today, thank you so much.